Hi sir, and welcome to Oceanic Flight. Please, may I see your boarding pass?
Of course.
Thank you. I will also need a negative PCR issued in the last 48 hours.
Of course.
Thank you. I'm afraid I also need a patch of hair of your firstborn son.
No problem.
And I will also need the One Ring.
Candles won't like that.
And last, I will need you to name all of Pi's glitches.
Hi Dygmates, it's Manel, lead product designer here at Dygma. When manufacturing the Dygma race in 2019, we traveled to China at least 5 times in less than a year. But the COVID pandemic changed everything. We had to adapt fast. For example, we hired people in China to be our manufacturing and shipping liaisons, our eyes in China. With that, we managed to manufacture several batches of the Dygma race, launch and manufacture the tenting kit, and kick off the Dygma Defy production. However, it's always easier to find suppliers and solve problems on the ground than to send samples back and forth across the globe. As soon as China opened its borders, we ran to get everything ready. I would have to stay in a random hotel for a week, eating the same sad noodles for breakfast, lunch and dinner, but I was willing to take that for the team. On December 2022, to travel to China, you need a visa, a passport, booked hotels and flights, and a negative PCR performed 48 hours before your arrival to China, which had to be verified by the embassy through an online procedure before boarding the plane. Then and only then, they send you a green QR code that you need to board the plane to China. We got the visa, the flights and the hotels and designed an elaborate plan to get the timing right with the PCR. The flight to Guangzhou from Madrid via Abu Dhabi is 20 hours long and it departs at 9:45 a.m. So we had to be precise in our calculations. I traveled to Madrid the day before the flight and we had booked an express PCR test late in the evening. That way the results would be in during the night. They take like about 6 hours. And I would submit it to the embassy first thing in the morning. This would give us a little bit of time in case the flight was delayed. So I took the test, had a nice dinner paid by Dygma and went to sleep. Early in the morning, I filled out the online form to submit the negative PCR results to the embassy with the rest of the documentation, etc. But it didn't give me a QR code. Instead, a message popped up telling me that someone would review my application. I checked my emails, my spam folder, my phone messages, nothing. I also called to the embassy, nothing. Okay, calm down, I said to myself, let's go to the airport, get the flight to Abu Dhabi, and when we arrive there, I will have my QR code ready in my telephone. You know, I rush to the airport and go straight to the check-in counters. The staff from the airline, very friendly, but they have devastating news. They can't let me board without the green QR code. Even though I'm not technically flying to China yet, and I have a negative PCR and all the paperwork, the system doesn't let them issue the boarding pass. Of course, we wrote and called the embassy again and again. Hell, I even went to the embassy, but they only respond via email. We finally got the approval from the embassy mid-afternoon, but yeah, it was too late. I had lost my flight and felt a bit like Tom Hanks in the terminal. It's just crazy that with such a tight time frame, it all depends on a manual process. You have no control over it. After I returned to Valencia, we dug deeper to find anyone who had flown to China and similar stories popped up. We also heard from our connection in China that lockdowns in our factories region were increasing every day, and if we had gotten there, I could have been quarantined most of the time. If you've been watching the news, China has changed its zero COVID strategy to COVID. Lockdowns have been raised, and now China is under a huge COVID wave. The situation is dramatic, and many people are getting sick, and of course, it's affecting also to our suppliers. With that scenario and the Chinese New Year around the corner, we have started planning and organizing a trip for February. That way, it's more likely that everything is as back to normal as possible and travel restrictions are lifted or eased. In the meantime, we'll continue with the mass production of the Dygma Defy remotely. This is not ideal, but we have been doing it with the Dygma race since the beginning, so we are kind of used to it. Right now we are doing the final adjustments to the component, like the tenting legs and the pal pads, and also moving on the DVT of the electronics. We are also making good progress with the final firmware and software of the keyboard, so we can start user testing as soon as possible. And when I go to China, I'll be able to check that everything is on point to start manufacturing all the components. That's all for now. I hope my adventures at the airport amused you. If you want to see more of that, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And if any producer wants to make this movie, call me. I'm sure Tom Hanks would be interested in playing my role.
I will also need the 7 Dragon Balls, and the Ark of the Covenant, and the Infinite Gems. And finally, but most importantly, which number do I have in my bag?
5.
No, it's 3. I'm sorry. Next!